wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
On today's episode, we're joined by Brittany. Brittany is a student of Stoicism and a stay-at-home mom with 3 children. Her blog is called it's called Apparent Stoic, correct? It's not
That's
the
right.
apparent. I always want to add the on the beginning, but Apparent Stoic at apparentstoic.com. Thanks for joining the show today.
It's great to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you discovered this philosophy?
Sure. Well, it was over a year ago now. I had just had my 3rd child and officially became a stay-at-home mom. I left a career that I loved and was kind of feeling really lost, didn't know where to turn. I didn't really have a good sense of the right direction to take with my kids, how to raise them. And I found some books on Stoicism, probably much like many of your listeners.
Sure.
And it really had a profound impact on the way that I approached life. And of course, once I started thinking about how to be a Stoic in my whole life, I naturally wanted to apply it to my children as well, to being a Stoic parent. So then I started thinking more and more about how can I do this. So I started the blog to kind of put together a coherent system for being a Stoic parent, as well as to hopefully reach some other people who are interested in the same topic.
Well, I found your blog, and so it's definitely very easy to find with a few key terms, Stoic and parenting, and it popped right up.
Great.
So do you have any advice, before we even jump into the field of parenting, any advice for those of us starting down the road of the study of Stoicism?
Sure. Well, I think Stoicism, it applies to everybody. And the way I look at it is it's really helpful to think about the 3 topoi, they call them, the 3 disciplines, and how it connects to your life in 3 different ways. One is your personal relationship with yourself, and that's related to the discipline of ascent. And another is your relationship with the universe or God or your spiritual side if you're religious. And the other is your relationship with other people. And Stoicism can really help with all 3 of those areas. So you can kind of feel like it's a coherent system. I feel like I'm an integrated person. I don't have to separate myself and, okay, I deal with people this way and I deal with my own emotions this way. It's all together. So I think it's really helpful to remember that it's a guide for everything in your life.
What are the major books that have influenced you so far?
Okay, well, for sure, William Irvine's book, A Guide to the Good Life, and Donald Robertson's book, The Stoicism and the Art of Happiness.
I just picked that one up. I haven't read it yet, but it's excellent.
It's really straightforward. It has some good concrete tips for applying Stoicism.
I know he's I'll say it wrong, but is it a psychologist or a psychotherapist or some? Yeah, so he has some neat concrete ideas of applying Stoicism. Mm-hmm. Any of the ancient works that have been? Do you have a favorite ancient Stoic?
Oh gosh, I cannot pick one. They are all really good, and I draw on all of them in my life and when I'm writing my blog. So I can't say that I feel especially drawn to one of them. They're all really good.
And I like what you said about a cohesive whole, being a whole person essentially, because I just asked Gregory Lopez about any Stoic practices that he found helpful, and he said he doesn't really like to approach it that way because it's a whole life philosophy, not a self-help trick. On your blog, on the Get Started page, basically, you say there are 5 cardinal, now 6, I believe, 6 cardinal rules for Stoic parenting. And you said you noticed the fact that children are not completely rational beings yet, and you are their parent, and how that applies to your cardinal rules.
Right. Well, one interesting thing that Stoicism actually has to offer is called oikiosis. It's the idea that everyone is developing throughout their lives, even we as adults, even until you die, even in old age, you're still developing. So the process of reaching virtue is a lifelong process. And I really love this idea as a Stoic parent because as parents, we ourselves are progressing towards virtue. You know, none of us are completely virtuous right now. We're still on that path. And we can bring our children with us on that journey. Of course, our children are starting from zero, so they're in a different location than we are, but it's something that we work on together. And I feel that connection with my kids. Yes, they start out as not being rational, but it's still a journey. It's all a journey. And Stoicism has a lot to say about development. So I really like that as a Stoic parent. Even though they're not rational, they will become that way.
So your first rule here is, what is it? Be the person you want your child to be. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right.
How do you integrate that into your everyday life?
So this is really the most important rule, because if you are not living out your principles, assuming that you have adopted Stoic principles, that's the most important step, because if your kids see you doing something unethical, they're not going to behave ethically themselves. And this really came home to me one day when I was yelling at my kids not to yell. And I stopped. I was like, wait a minute, that's hypocritical. If I'm going to tell them to behave well, then I have to start by behaving well myself. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
So
that is
do as I say, not as I do is probably not a good way to live.
Right. Right. So you want to really live out your beliefs before you can start coaching your children towards virtue.
Your second rule is integrate your Stoic principles into your parenting practices.
So this is where I mentioned it's really helpful to have an integrated system. And that's another thing I like about being a Stoic parent. It's not like you read a parenting book and then you think, oh, okay, well, this is what I have to do with my child. It's that your parenting ideas and techniques all come from your core beliefs as a parent. So you don't have to stop and remember, oh, I'm supposed to use this word and do that. It's all kind of organic and more authentic. So it really helps you to, of course, you always have to use your judgment and your wisdom in every situation, but you don't have to pause and think, okay, what are my values here in this situation? You always have those values with you that you're going to teach virtue. So that's really what I mean by integrating your Stoic principles, is that you approach your child rearing in the same way that you approach virtue throughout your life. So some examples of that is the idea that your children are still learning, and everyone starts from a kind of ignorance. The idea of amathia. Are you familiar with that?
I've not used the term on the podcast, but I have read it. If you'd like to mention it, that'd be great.
Yeah. So Massimo Pigliucci talks about this in his book, How to Be a Stoic. And he says that this is a word that we don't have in our English vocabulary today. It's basically unwisdom or disknowledge. It's a lack of wisdom. So this is helpful for me to think about not only with other people, other adults who don't necessarily live virtuously, but also with your children. They simply haven't learned the right way to behave. They just haven't learned it yet. And it's your job as a parent to teach them that. So once you start looking at it that way, it becomes easier to stay calm. You don't need to get upset. You're just teaching them. It's not something you need to take personally.
Which brings us to number 3, which is got Epictetus written all over it. Remember that you do not control your child.
This was one of those aha moments for me as a parent, probably for many people, when you realize, wait a minute, this is what I've been doing wrong all this time. I've been trying to control her, and you just can't do it. You'll always be unhappy if that's your goal, is to control your child. So then the question becomes, okay, I don't control them, but I do have responsibility over them. So what is the balance? How do you figure out what's your authority versus not controlling somebody? So that's an ongoing question that I look at in my blog, and that I think every Stoic parent really has to address. But a couple of strategies, general Stoic strategies that I've applied to parenting that I find work really well is from William Irvine's book, A Guide to the Good Life. So he suggests internalizing your goals. And he says this in the context of the trichotomy of control. So it's not simply just things I can't control at all, I have no control over, and things that I have total control over. There's a third category, kind of the middle ground, things that I have some control over, but not complete control over. Obviously, that's where your children fall, right?
Yeah.
So he says
I've
that a
noticed
good way
that
to
with my little one.
yes. So a good way to look at that is to internalize your goals and say, well, I will do my best to help my child have good table manners, for example. I will help my child to not put his feet on the table. But if he insists on doing it, I won't get upset because it's not my brain controlling his body, right? I don't have total control. So once you start internalizing your goals and you make your goal, I will do my best to help my child do something, then that takes away a lot of your frustration because you don't fail in your goal every day. If your goal is to make your child practice the piano and your child doesn't want to do it, then you feel like a failure. But if your goal is to help your child, then you can always know that, okay, I accomplished my goal. I tried my best. Even if your child doesn't do a great job, you can still be satisfied that you met your goal for the day.
And I know you have a post on disciplining your child as a Stoic. I have yet to read that one to see what you have to say, but I look forward to reading that one. Along with that, then, number 4 is remove your ego from parenting. It's not about you.
Right. This one I think of relates a lot to the idea of eliminating negative emotions. So the Stoics have a view of emotion saying that we are responsible for our emotions by changing our beliefs. So your emotions come from what you believe is important and true in life. And Marcus Aurelius talks about this one where if you want to be happy, you just remove your sense of injury. If someone can only insult you if you allow yourself to be insulted, for example. If you remove your belief that you've been injured, then voila, you're not insulted anymore. So I apply this raising my kids. It's tempting if your kid says no to you, that we take that as an insult a lot of times. But really, it's just a parenting situation. So if you step back and you say, I choose not to take this in a bad way, it's just the normal part of parenting. Every kid says no. So you remove your ego and suddenly you can stay a lot calmer and deal in a much better way with the situation.
Excellent advice. I've seen plenty of parents who failed at that,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope I've started to practice this philosophy early enough as my child grows into his, as they say, terrible twos and things, that I'm able to cope and be a good dad at the same time, a good practicing Stoic dad as we grow together. You also say then number 5, teach your kids the disciplines of desire, action, and assent. And actually on that interview with Gregory Lopez, I had him define those because I've talked more about the virtues of Stoicism. I haven't focused on the podcast yet about those actual disciplines. Do you have any comments on applying those to parenting or teaching those to children?
Yes. Well, there is one post on my blog if you want specific details about that, where I actually lay out a plan and connect each 3 of these disciplines with what you can teach your kids.
Excellent.
So just some general goals. You have to bring it down to your kids' level, of course, especially something as complex as the discipline of assent. That's very, very complex. But I've developed kind of kid-friendly, even for young kids, ways that you can integrate it into everyday life. For example, the discipline of desire is really learning that you don't always get what you want, right? That's a basic lesson that everyone can understand, even if they don't want to. You can start teaching it to your kids even when they're 2 years old, for example.
And then the discipline of action. How do we integrate that one into our children's lives?
Yes, this is a very important one for young children. And I say that one is treat other people the way you want to be treated, the classic golden rule. But it's really a great place to start because when you have a 2-year-old interacting with other kids, they just don't have that abstract thought. So you have to bring it down to a very concrete level for them. And, it still takes a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It's very hard to do. But the earlier you start and the more you talk about it, I'm very big on talking with your kids about your ethical decision-making process. So if you start talking about it early, you give them the concept and the vocabulary to start, they'll start thinking about it for themselves.
Yeah, that sounds Sounds reasonable and accomplishable, but as long as you keep in mind rules 3 and 4 at the same time.
Exactly. You can only do so much, and you have to stay calm.
Yeah. And then number 6, probably one of the most important ones that we will regret deeply if we don't do, enjoy your kids. I would imagine that involves some mindfulness, being in the moment, living now, rather than worrying about the future or the past. Is that what you're going for there?
That is absolutely true. And this, to be honest, has been one of the hardest for me, because my brain is always thinking, oh, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. Especially once you have kids, it obviously changes your life from your previous life. You know, you don't have as much time for hobbies and lots of other things. You have a lot more obligations. That's just the way it is. They're wonderful obligations. So I found that it's extremely important to take a time out and just think, wait a minute, this is a special time in my life when I get to spend time with my young kids. I need to enjoy it while I can. And there are some visualization exercises, and particularly the view from above is really helpful for this, because sometimes when, the house is a mess, the kids are cranky, I think, why me? Why am I the only one who has to deal with this? You zoom out for a minute and think about all the millions of other parents who are going through exactly the same thing. It's just a normal part of parenting. So we need to just stay calm and enjoy what we have.
Excellent advice, Brittany. If there's a new Stoic parent out there or experienced parent out there, they can go to your blog, aparentstoic.com, and there's also a Facebook group. Is that correct?
Exactly. Just look us up at Stoic Parent.
And I really appreciate you being on the show. Is there anything else you want to add?
Thank you. It was a pleasure, and I would just say good luck and stay calm. You're not alone.
Stay calm and carry on. Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you.
Like the show? Help support the Sunday Stoic by rating us on iTunes. Volunteer to read, suggest content, or send comments to sundaystoic@gmail.com. Thanks, and carpe diem.